This is our third feature for Portugal.com, and very much looking forward to giving everyone a full update on what is happening on the ground as far as Portugal's Golden Visa program. For those that haven't joined before, my name is Jason. I'm one of the senior partners for a company called Holborn Assets. More on us shortly, but my focus for today is to answer some of the key questions. The main headlines for today's webinar is, as I mentioned, we're going to look at the latest news. How long do we have left? The title, of course, of the webinar is, do we still have time to apply for the visa? The answer is yes, but for how long? We shall find out shortly. Further than that, we'll go through the general process for the visa, what's involved, who it's for those that are just at the beginning of their research for whether or not the Golden Visa is the way forward. I'll make sure to cover the basics of the program and the qualifying criteria for how to achieve the Golden Visa as well. You may be already aware that the Golden Visa is around investment for residency and citizenship. So we'll be looking also at some of the leading investments that currently qualify for the visa as well. The criteria begins from €280,000, depending on which investment route that you wish to go down. I'll explain the criteria for family members as well, and who and how many family members you can include on an application. We did one last week for 14 people, all on one application, making sure they got the money's worth on that one. But I'll talk you through the criteria for that also. We'll have a look at some of my personal favorites as well for what is still available to buy for the Golden Visa and the latest availability. The main focus thereafter is going to be a live Q&A. I'm going to try not to kind of talk at everyone for too long, and we'll get straight through the question and answers at the end. You will see a Q&A box towards the bottom of your screen. So as we go through, please don't be shy. Please add questions in as we go. I will kind of collate those for the end as we go. But yeah, any questions pop up, please stick them in there. That is that will be kind of finishing off then. Be hopefully on the hour. We've got until around about 7 o'clock Portugal time, which would give us plenty of time to get through everyone's questions. So other than that, yeah, let's begin. So just to introduce myself, again, my name is Jason Swan. I'm one of the senior partners at Holborn Assets that you'll see here at the bottom right-hand side. We're actually a wealth management practice, so we're not a Golden Visa company. We're not an estate agent. My job is as a regulated and qualified financial planner based here in Portugal. And the majority of my day is spent helping my clients manage their income and reduce their taxes as they come to become tax resident here in Portugal. Holborn manages in excess of $3 billion between our 20 offices worldwide. The Citizenship and Residency program, which we're going to cover today, was launched around about 6 years back. And it's designed to do just that. It's designed to help our clients achieve residency and citizenship in different parts of the world by way of investment. Today, of course, we're going to be focusing on Portugal, and Portugal's investment program is, of course, the Golden Visa. I live in Portugal. I came here myself about 2 years ago. I'm down in Albufeira, for those that are familiar with the Algarve. Previous to Portugal, I was over in Spain, in Malaga, for 5 years. I still have not picked up very much Spanish. My Portuguese is even worse. I'm very good with numbers. I'm not particularly talented with languages, unfortunately, but I still have 3 years left to get to a basic level of Portuguese for my passport, which is, of course, one of the criteria for everybody watching as well. So, yeah, as far as kind of what the program is, the Golden Visa was launched kind of 2012, and since which it's been one of the most successful investment programs into Europe, and it is very much seen as the gateway into Europe. Portugal has the lowest entry requirements for residency and in turn citizenship, and they also have the fastest time to achieve a passport of the EU countries as well, of just 5 years. So the Golden Visa allows you to invest in certain qualifying investments here in Portugal, and in return you are granted the permission to live full-time if you wish, and also to benefit from a number of EU um, benefits, shall we say, of like things like healthcare, of education. They have some of the best healthcare systems anywhere in the world here in Portugal. Not to mention, of course, a very nice standard of living. However, coming back to the program, like I say, it's a 2-year visa. The idea being that you can renew the visa every 2 years. You can do that for the rest of your life, should you so wish. However, after 5 years, you're able to apply for citizenship and your passport here in Portugal. Portugal passport is, of course, a European passport, and the perk of which being that you can at that point live in any of the European countries. So you're basically getting 27 passports all at the same time by going through the Golden Visa program here in Portugal. Since the program was launched in 2012, there's now been over 11,000 successful applications from visa to citizenship. My company has done over 10% of the world's Golden Visa applications since the program was launched. We're also proud to say that we have a 100% flawless application success rate so far as well, which we do not intend to break. Largely comes down to the level of due diligence that we carry out both on our clients before we begin the process, but also making sure that the properties that we're recommending have been pre-approved for the program as well. So yeah, well, that gives you a good idea of what the visa is. As I mentioned before, the benefits of which is the right to live in Portugal. It's a nice place to be. I'm very biased towards the Algarve. Generally, it's a little bit warmer. I think the beaches are a little bit nicer. The cost of living is still quite low compared to some parts of Europe, certainly. Lisbon is, of course, the main hub of Portugal. Very much a city centre, much more built up than the Algarve, a lot busier. Of course, a lot more opportunity for employment in Lisbon as well. And of course, at the north of Portugal, you have Porto, which is kind of a bit of in between of the two. But they're the main areas. Anywhere on the coast, you're not going to go too far wrong for some nice beaches. And of course, you have inland Portugal as well, if you're not too fussed about going swimming at the seaside. Nonetheless, outside of working on your suntan, you also get access to, like I say, the healthcare of Portugal. You get access to Portugal's education system, both for yourself and for your family as well. And for those that don't carry an American passport, so I can imagine a few confused faces now, but for those that don't have an American passport, also get access to a very unique tax treatment called NHR, which is a tax regime you can apply for that allows you to have a very low rate of tax on your overseas income for the first 10 years that you live in Portugal. So loads to attract you to Portugal. And you basically, with the visa, have the same rights as a Portuguese citizen, other than you cannot vote and you cannot run for president. But if you're not too fussed about becoming the president, you have the same rights as if you was born here. So loads to talk about. Now, not the most exciting topic. I'll briefly touch on the tax program. This, just to be clear, is not linked to the Golden Visa. This applies only when you physically move to Portugal. But as you become tax resident here, you can apply for the tax regime of NHR, which is for non-habitual residents. And in more straightforward terms, it is a tax reduction on your overseas income for the first 10 years that you live in Portugal. For those that have a company at home where they draw dividends, where they have a share portfolio where you draw dividends, that is one source of income that is entirely tax-free in Portugal under NHR. Also, the same applies for rental income. The pension income is capped at just 10% as well. If you are still working, if you work in a certain capacity, whether employed or self-employed, you may also qualify for a flat rate of tax of just 20% on your income as well. And for those that are retiring to Portugal that are going to be drawing their income from certain investments, there are tools that you can utilize where you can hold your portfolio within tax efficient investment vehicles here in Portugal that will give you up to a 60% reduction on the tax payable on those profits as well. Hi there, Nathaniel. Thanks for putting up your hand. If you can just stick any questions in the Q&A box for now, I shall certainly come to those shortly. Please bear with me. That's NHR. Again, it's not the most exciting topic. It's not applicable until you physically move to Portugal, whenever that may be, but it's certainly something to look forward to for non-Americans. Unfortunately for Americans, just so you know why I'm saying that, you are from one of two countries in the entire world that will continue to tax you even if you don't live there anymore. So it kind of supersedes the incentives from Portugal. It's not a thick and fast rule. There may be an incentive for NHR, but only on the basis that you sacrifice your American citizenship for your Portuguese citizenship after the 5-year period. But again, any questions on that, any specific personal questions, happy to go through that to explain in some more detail. So back to the Golden Visa. So I've changed my slide from the last webinar, and I've put Portugal Golden Visa 27 days to go, which is only an estimate. Like, it's very difficult to judge exactly when the program may finish. Just a bit of history on the closure of the program. Back in November time last year, the Prime Minister made his first announcement about the fact that the Golden Visa program has now served its purpose and is no longer needed. It's no longer to the benefit of Portugal. And it was going to close. We took that with a bit of a pinch of salt. It's not the first time that it's been said. Last time it happened a couple of years ago. Ultimately, the program stayed open with some changes in the criteria. So this time round, we're kind of assuming the same may happen. However, Antonio Costa announced in February this year that the program is definitely closing, and said it with some gusto in his voice this time, and made it very clear that it's going to happen as soon as possible. Now, since that, of course, Mr. Costa doesn't have the ability to just change the law by himself. It then follows a legal process. And following that announcement, for the following 45 days, in the end, should have been 30 days, it was extended to 45 days, there was a public discussion where the members of Portugal as a whole got to put their vote forward as to how they feel the housing crisis in Portugal is best solved, and whether or not the removal of the visa is actually a good idea. This was one of 16 proposed changes in law to help address Portugal's housing crisis, if you like, and of course is the most heavily debated part of that draft change in law. But there was a huge backlash. Obviously, the Golden Visa has brought in billions of euros, to the Portuguese economy since it was launched in 2012. You can imagine the sheer number of jobs created from that influx of investment and immigration thereon from abroad. So although it may be a solution to the housing crisis, it also has a substantial negative impact on the economy should it close. So there was a lot of angry people, legal people, and different industries putting forward their views and comments on whether or not it makes sense. That very long 45-day discussion, short, is the fact that the draft law was updated. It was made a little bit softer. Some of the points mentioned by the Prime Minister initially were removed. However, it remained very clear that the program is going to be closed. So we're now in the stage of waiting for Parliament to vote on that new draft. Okay, I have a copy of the proposed changes, and yeah, the only one really of relevance for today's webinar is the fact that the program is going to close as it stands. The common consensus is that Parliament will vote for it to continue in its current form, and we will probably have confirmation of that over the next 1 to 2 weeks potentially. Once, if that is correct, if Parliament does continue and say, yes, we're going to close the programme, it must then be ratified by the President, which is likely to take another week or two as well. So we're kind of right in the thick of that at the moment. In a worst case scenario, for the legal process to be executed and the change of law to be executed as early as possible, as the Prime Minister is explaining, that could be as early as the end of May, is the worst case scenario, the end of May, where the law may change and it's D-Day. The Prime Minister has confirmed, this was also something that was very controversial from the initial announcement, that any applications submitted after the 16th of February would not be accepted. There was headlines left, right, and centre all over the internet. I had clients panicking because they thought everything was going to pot, and of course, it would have been a huge. There would have been huge issues had applications been retrospectively not accepted. So, since which the Prime Minister has confirmed that they're taking a step back on that, and any applications submitted before the change in law will be honoured. So you now have a reassurance from the Portuguese government that as long as you meet the deadline and you submit your application, you will be honoured and protected by the current laws. And as I say, that may be the end of May. We think it's quite unlikely it will be the end of May. More realistically, the beginning of June. It is still possible that we have some kind of grace period if Portugal follows in a similar route to Ireland. Just a few months back, Ireland granted a 3-month grace period to allow applications to be submitted and completed. However, right up until now, right until this very late point, there's not been any mention of any grace period so far. It seems to be very clear that the program is to close as soon as possible. So we hope we will. We know if we really cross our fingers, we might even get till the end of the year. We don't know for sure just yet, but from the facts in front of us, we have to prepare for a worst case scenario, being that of the end of May. So that's where we stand. And just to kind of summarize on that, to be absolutely certain to receive the visa, we must submit your application and we must receive a tracking number from CEF before the law physically changes, okay, which could be the end of May. After that point, we don't know. We just don't know. We might have a bit more time, we might not. So if this is something that you're considering, my advice is to do it straight away, because we can never predict how long we're going to have. There is also other pressing concerns that since the announcement in February, there's been no new developments come to market. The builders in Portugal and alike are very reluctant to release new hotels when they don't know how long they're going to have to sell them. So the message at the moment from the different developers that we work with is once they're gone, they're gone. Unless the program is extended, then it's unlikely that new properties are going to come to market. So stock is running out. I don't know what will come first, whether it'll be the withdrawal of the program or running out of qualifying properties, but we shall see. So if it's something that you want to do, please ask questions. Please book a meeting with me if you want to go through questions personally, if you need the cost breakdown, if you need to know more about the process. Anything, of course, we cover in the webinar. There will be a recording of the webinar emailed to you this week. There'll also be a link to my calendar should you wish to book a meeting, and I have some availability from Monday onwards next week. So that's where we stand currently. Hopefully that is nice and clear. Again, any questions on anything I've covered so far, please add to the Q&A, and I should be sure to come back to them. Okay, so let's start with the basics. So for those that are not too familiar with the program, the idea is that you can bring to Portugal 3 generations of family all in the same application. And the way it works is that as long as you don't already have EU citizenship, you can apply. And you can also include who are deemed to be dependent family members on the same application. So that can include a spouse, whether married or unmarried, as long as you're living together. You can include children up to the age of 21, potentially older if they're still in education. And also you can include parents as well. Now, you must prove dependency for parents, or if they are above the age of 65, they are automatically assumed as dependent, and therefore you can add them to the application without any problems. So yeah, as I said, we did an application last week or so for 14 people. We had step parents, we had children, we had everybody on there. It was good fun. But of course, they all benefit from the same visa and from the same route to citizenship, even though there is only the one investment that's done. So again, hope that's nice and clear. Any questions on that? Yeah, please drop them in the Q&A. As far as the criteria for property, now this is something that changed. So I mentioned before, it's not the first time the Prime Minister mentioned that the program is going to close. Back in 2020 was the first time, and ultimately the program didn't close, but the qualifying criteria did change. And as of the beginning of last year, the government announced that if you want to purchase an investment that is in any of the main cities, such as Lisbon, Porto, or basically anywhere on the coast with tourism, then you can no longer purchase residential property. And you now must buy a commercial property. And in other words, it is as an investment. It's not somewhere for you to live. Okay, you can buy property, but it has to be as an investment as opposed as a holiday home, an Airbnb, or somewhere for you to move to in the future. You can still buy residential property, but only inland Portugal. And although that is still an option, of course, it's very difficult to find a property where you'd like to live, unless you already have one, of course, to actually fly to Portugal, find a place that you'd like to live, and buy that property within the next couple of weeks. So commercial properties, of course, you're thinking a lot more with your head rather than your heart. You're looking at the numbers, you're looking at the facts and figures in front of you, as opposed to, for example, your personal preferences on where you'd like to live. So it allows you to make educated decisions without necessarily having to worry about what the kind of questions that you'd have if you was living there. But the price, the qualifying criteria is to buy at 500,000 by default to qualify for the visa. If you do buy a property in a low density area, however, you get a 20% discount from that figure, bringing it to 400,000. The only way to reduce it below 400,000 is to invest in a commercial project where the building is over 30 years old and is being fully renovated. If so, the minimum comes down to 350. And if you can do that in a low density area, again, you get another 20% discount, bringing that down to just 280,000. We have put together a portfolio of properties across Portugal, which we feel are solid investments as far as we know who the developer is. They have a good track record. They have a handsome portfolio of properties already under their belt, and they can honor the incentives that are offered. Okay, we only choose to work with well-known and credible developers here in Portugal, where we have already carried out a very high level of due diligence to make sure that before we put our name to these developers, that everything is as it should be. But we have built a portfolio of properties ranging out from 280 at 350, 400 and 500. As a general rule, the properties that are priced at 280 are less profitable, but of course the advantage is that you can achieve the visa with half as much capital being tied up. The investments at 500 you'll find are much more profitable, but of course it also requires more capital to be invested. So you just want to find a nice balance between those two, and we'll look at some of those shortly to give you an example. Property accounts for around 90 to 95% of Golden Visa applications at the moment and has done over the past 12 months, but it's not the only option. From 500,000, you can invest into a Portuguese investment fund. The caveat to that is that it must be invested into at least 60% Portuguese assets. So the performance is often restricted, and they're not necessarily the type of investment funds you would choose in the open market. But there is a choice. You can choose from high risk, medium risk, or low risk investment funds. There is also venture capital funds. I've seen some wild and wacky projects happening in Portugal with renewable energy and new farmland and all different projects to the benefit of Portugal that you can get involved with, again, investing from 500,000. The other option is you can invest in scientific research from 500,000. You can set up or establish a Portuguese business from 500,000. Or if you wish, you can simply transfer 1.5 million euros into a Portuguese bank account for 5 years. I've not found anyone that's done that just yet, strangely. Portuguese banks don't really pay any interest, nor is it the best place to keep 1.5 million euros as far as necessarily the regulation of the Portuguese banks compared to the US or perhaps over in the UK, but it is an option nonetheless. So that's the criteria. You can choose. Anything that's highlighted in yellow will qualify you for the visa. And of course, part of our job initially is to help find an investment that you like. Again, any questions on that, please add to the Q&A. So the process, okay, this is a bit of a busy slide, but this is the process from right now until when you get the visa in your hand. Okay, step one is to choose an investment that qualifies for the program, and we start the process, which will begin with us applying for your Portuguese tax number. And if you don't already have one, you can't really do a lot in Portugal without your tax number, and we will get that back within generally 3 or 4 days of starting the process. What we used to do up until the recent announcement, we'd then go ahead and set up a bank account in Portugal on your behalf. However, the average time to set up a bank account now from abroad is taking about 8 weeks. So of course, with the impending deadline, it is no longer recommended to set up a bank account if you want to guarantee meeting the deadline. It might still work if we get an extension, but it's not recommended. The two other options that you have is you can fly into Portugal if you like. If you want to use me as an excuse to come for a holiday in Portugal, you're very welcome, because you can set up a bank account on the same day, which speeds up that process. What most of our clients are doing at the moment is simply using their lawyer's escrow account, which is the third option. You can transfer directly to the lawyer's escrow account, who will complete the purchase on your behalf and set up the bank account retrospectively. So again, we'll discuss that at the time, but generally, yeah, flying into Portugal or to use the lawyer's escrow account. You'll meet with the lawyer as soon as you have your tax number. They will complete, of course, the normal Portuguese paperwork. You'll have a sale and purchase contract. There might be buyback contracts. There may be rental contracts. You'll complete the power of attorney with your lawyer. And once that is done, they'll give you the green light to transfer the capital to your Portuguese bank account for the purchase or to their escrow account. And once received, they'll complete the deed. As we refer to here in Portugal, you'll become the owner of the property. And from that point, we can then submit your application. That's the cutoff point. That's all we need to do before the deadline. You do not need to receive the visa before the deadline, okay? Only to apply. So that's the plan. We've got to do all that in the next potentially 3 to 4 weeks in a worst case scenario. So there's a lot to do. On average, we are able to fast track the process. The fastest we've done it is about 6 days. On average, it's 2 to 4 weeks, on the proviso that you can provide us with the information necessary to submit the application. But we're okay. And just want to add at this point as well that we right now are still confident of beating the deadline for new applications. We actually guarantee to hit the deadline. If we don't hit the deadline for any reason, then we will fully reimburse you for any deposit that you've paid on a property, and also any legal fees that you've paid as well. So right now that offer stands, and you'll see that as part of our terms of business, that you'll have that protection with Holborn to make sure that if the deadline just is too close to submit your application, then you won't lose a penny along the way. But right now, like I said, we wouldn't offer that if we didn't think we could meet that deadline. But once we've done that, we submit the application, we get the tracking number from CEF, and we can relax a little bit. My team will continue then to process the application with CEF. CEF is the Portuguese Borders Agency, if you like, or the Immigration Office. Never a nice place to deal with. Whenever you have a meeting with CEF, there's always queues that go around the block, and very painful sometimes, but nonetheless, we deal with CEF on your behalf. The only time which you need to actually come to Portugal formally is for your meeting with CEF, which will be for your biometrics appointment, where you'll have your fingerprints and your photo taken. A member of the legal team will accompany you to CEF to help with the appointment, and for the translation that you'll need at that point. Other than that, yeah, they'll take your mugshot, and shortly thereafter, you will expect to receive your visa, which will look a little bit like this here at the bottom. The process at the moment, from the point of submitting the application to receiving the visa in hand, is taking around about 12 months. Okay, might be a little less, might be a little longer. It's hard to say, but currently around 12 months. Okay, so that's nice and clear. Again, any questions on that part, please do ask in the Q&A. Once you have the visa, okay, as mentioned before, the visa will last for 2 years. So you have unadulterated access to Portugal and all the benefits thereof for 2 years. And you can renew the visa every 2 years. It's now an online process. Up until earlier this year, you had to actually come back to Portugal and go and meet with SEF every 2 years, which was always something that you would be dreading. But it's now all online, very straightforward. And you can renew after year 2. You renew after year 4. And then after you've held the visa for 5 years, you can apply for your permanent residency and also your citizenship, which is, of course, the passport as well. And that's at the point where you then have access to all of Europe as much as you would like once you become a citizen of Portugal. The only caveat to making sure you get the citizenship is to understand a relatively basic level of Portuguese to an A2 level. I am a million miles off that just yet, but it's on my to-do list. But yeah, you need to have a basic understanding of Portuguese to be able to apply for citizenship, and you have 5 to 6 years to do that. Okay, excellent. So that's the process. That's what we do. As a quick recap. Step 1: find an investment that's going to qualify for the program, and we submit the application before the law changes. Worst case scenario, that's going to be the end of May. So you'll be looking to buy the property and submit your application in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And just to highlight, the process on average takes 2 to 4 weeks in order to get all that work done with the tax number, power of attorney, legal forms, transfer of capital, and so on. Once you've submitted the application, there's around about 12 months then to be able to receive the visa. That lasts for 2 years. We'll renew that visa after year 2. We renew again after year 4. And then after the 5th year, we'll apply for your permanent residency and your passport. Mission accomplished. Piece of cake. And so that's the plan. That's what we do. That is my team holds your hand right through the process. Okay, we have a very large team, a very rapidly increasing team at Holborn to help submit applications and make sure you have a point of contact throughout the process. You'll always have myself as the project manager, if you will, making sure everybody is speaking to one another, including bank managers, including SEF, including people that are submitting your residency application, the translations, and so forth. So there's a lot involved, but we'll try and make it as stress-free as we can. Okay, so that's it. Again, any questions? I can see some good questions coming in on the Q&A, so please do add them in. I will save them to the end to make sure we cover everything in time. But that's the process. That's what we need to do. That's the challenge ahead. A good point to just answer the question, actually, of the webinar, just to highlight, you do have time. There is time. Forget the headlines that you've read about the Portugal Golden Visa being closed in February, and it's all over, and all this nonsense that's been more designed to kind of get clicks rather than actually understanding the Portuguese law. The program is exactly the same now as it was a year ago. You can still submit an application. The Prime Minister has confirmed all applications will be honoured, okay, as long as it's submitted before the change in law comes into effect. So the answer to today's webinar is yes, you have time, but time is nigh. I would never encourage anyone to rush into any decisions, but make sure that you get the information that you need to talk it through with your family and to make a decision if it is something that you want to do as soon as possible, because we may only have 4 weeks, and on average the process takes 2 to 4 weeks to get everything through. So on that note, that is the process. So I hope that's okay so far. The last but not least then is the I say the fun bit, slightly more fun bit, but having a look at some of the properties. Okay, so we built a portfolio which we are comfortable to recommend. And yeah, I'll give you some of the highlights, and I'll highlight along the way some of my personal favorites as well. So starting at 280, okay, there's a development in Beja, inland Portugal, between Lisbon and the Algarve. It ticks all the boxes to qualify at 280. And if you can remember, the criteria to qualify at 280 is a commercial property which is over 30 years old, which is going through a full renovation and is in a low density area. So we've got all those boxes ticked. This hotel is due for completion later this year, and when it's all finished, it will look like you see in the photos, and it will be a holiday inn once all done. The proposition, very straightforward. It's a very traditional co-ownership route to the visa. Okay, so you can buy a share. The developer basically says you can buy a share in our hotel for 280,000 euros to qualify for the Golden Visa. We're looking for 60 investors in total, and we will pay most of the taxes. So the developer on this one pays the IMT and the VAT, which equates to around about 20,000 euros, which you would typically pay if you was buying a property on the open market here in Portugal. So a big incentive up front with a reduction in taxes. They also offer a buyback. Now this is really important, I think, when you're looking for an investment, is to always have the option of a buyback. You never know for sure what prices are going to look like when you get your passport in 5 to 6 years. So if you have a buyback, it means that in a worst case scenario, you're going to at least get the money back that you invested into the property. Some buybacks are mandatory. For example, this one. Okay, so there is no option on this one where you have to sell it back. Okay, you get 280 invested and you get 280 back as soon as you get your passport. Others are optional, where you get to keep the property if you wish to. But also, the developer will let you stay in any of the hotels for 7 days every year, free of charge, to maintain your minimum stay requirements during those 5 years. And there's some really nice hotels within the portfolio to choose from. But there's no rental income and there's no interest, okay, which is a bit of a thumbs down, but nonetheless, it's a solid option with a big developer and a well-known hotel chain. Next up, okay, this is officially the lowest capital required for an investment that qualifies. Very similar to the first proposition, but this is a Wyndham hotel, or will be a Wyndham hotel when it's finished. This is located in a much nicer area, in my opinion. It's located just 1 hour south of Lisbon in a town called Alcaçar do Sol, right on the waterfront. And when it's finished, it will be a 4-star Wyndham Gardens resort, and it will look exactly as you see there in the photos. The proposition this time around, very similar. Okay, apart from this one is a much bigger development, so there is 110 investors required for this one. At last check, there was less than 10 slots left at this one, but there is definitely still some availability as of today. The ownership is co-ownership, okay, as before. So your name is on the deeds to the hotel along with the other investors. The developer pays the IMT and the VAT taxes, which is great. There is a mandatory buyback when you have your passport. Big incentive with this one, however, is that as soon as you complete the purchase, you receive an upfront rental payment of 30,000 euros, which basically reimburses you for things like the government fees, the government costs of the visa, and also legal fees as well. Depending on how many family members are actually on the application, you might find actually walking away with a profit after receiving your passports as well. So at the moment, there's a big difference. There's literally 30,000 euros difference between this and the Holiday Inn. You can also stay for 7 days in any of the developers' hotels. As before, I do think this will be the first one to sell. Once this sells, the Holiday Inn naturally will become a little more attractive. But at the moment, yeah, you're effectively buying a share for 250 and selling back at 280. Again, any questions on this one, just drop in the Q&A or drop me an email naturally once we finish. The third and final one at this price point, the Yellow Tulip. I love this one. It's very close to where I live in the Algarve, so I'm a little bit biased on this one, but it's a really nice place to be. Alvor is the town I go to as a kind of a weekend weekend stay. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, the Alvor is a really nice place. It's got some of the nicest steak restaurants in Portugal. Not that I can compare all of them. And also, it's got one of the most incredible beaches in the Algarve as well, which you'll see on one of my videos on the Holborn channel. The idea with this one, it's already built. Okay, this is already a hotel, and it's on booking.com. It's a 4-star hotel, and it's very rundown. It's very dated. It's very kind of year 2000 when you go inside. However, hence the renovation, which begun in January this year. So at the moment, it's called the Yellow Alvor Garden. Yellow Alvor Garden. Not the best name, but it will be rebranded as the Yellow Tulip when the renovation is complete. At which point, there's going to be all new sports facilities down here at the back, 2 new tennis courts, there's a volleyball court, beach volleyball, I think. The swimming pools are being rebuilt. The restaurants are being redone. All the communal areas, all the furniture, all the rooms redecorated. And when it's finished, it will be a 4-star all-inclusive hotel in the Algarve, a much nicer 4-star nonetheless. The difference with this photo was taken in summer last year, as was this one as well. So as you can see, it's fully operational already. The difference with this one is that it's not a share. You're not buying a share in the hotel. You are buying an individual apartment, or in other words, you're buying a full title deed to an individual property, which gives you some more control over when you sell it. However, be aware that the property did fully sell out a couple of weeks back. I am aware that there are 2 apartments that have come back for sale. For whatever reason, the buyers couldn't continue. And the apartments that are left is this one here. There's a ground floor poolside apartment, which is priced at 290. And there is an apartment on the hillside on the ground floor, which is priced at 285. But they are the only 2. They're the only 2 left. The incentives from the developer, they actually pay both the IMT and the stamp duty. Stamp duties are only about 1,700 euros, but they pay all of the taxes up front. Again, you're buying a full title deed, which means that you own the individual apartment. You have a guaranteed buyback. However, it is a optional buyback on this one. So if property prices go up in the next 5 years, like they have done in the last 5 years, you may wish to keep it. You may wish to keep it and sell it on the open market for a higher price, or you may wish to keep it and just enjoy the rental income that is paid from the hotel. And the hotel is responsible for all of the maintenance, cleaning, upkeep, marketing, and so on of all the apartments. However, they will pay the owners a 50% share of the rental, which equates to around about 5 to 6% per year. But I must stress, it only starts from the 6th year. There's no upfront rental with this one like there is with the Wyndham. But if you do decide to keep the property as an investment, from the 6th year, you will receive a rental income as well. Also, the other bonus is you get to stay for 2 weeks for free instead of just the 1 week as well. So yeah, that's the third and final one at this price point. Any questions on those? If you'd like the brochures for these developments, if you'd like, of course, a personalized cost breakdown for these, if you'd like to check the availability on them, just send me an email. You'll have my email already, but you'll have that at the end of the webinar as well. As we go through, the next step then is kind of the 350 mark. I don't think there's a huge incentive to buy at 350. Well, in my humble opinion, but if you wanted to buy at 350, there is a nice development in Lisbon, in the centre, really nice part of Lisbon actually, which is this here called Riverside Downtown. You can see they're very, very close to the seafront. You can buy a share in the hotel for 350 this time. It qualifies under the renovation criteria, but it's not a low density area this time, so it's 350 to qualify. And the taxes are paid. The vast majority of the taxes are paid. The developer will pay 3% per year from when the hotel is built, not from the outset. So that will equate to around about 10,000 euros. So it's an extra 70,000 to buy a share compared to previous, but there is an incentive of 10,000 as a rental income. You still have a guaranteed and mandatory buyback on this one, and you can stay again for 7 days in any of the developers' hotels. For me personally, I would prefer to keep 70,000 in the bank, or should I say invest elsewhere, rather than take the 10,000. But hey, if you want to see an extra 10,000 at 350, this might be a good choice. Okay, Pelican. The Pelican is right behind the yellow Tulip in the Algarve. It has the 1-beds have unfortunately sold out now. There are still some 2-beds for sale. The Pelican is already finished. It's already on booking.com. You can stay there tonight. It's very nice, very nice part of Alvor behind the yellow Tulip. And the proposition with this one, again, qualifies at 400. So this time it's a new build property, but in a low density area, hence 400. Again, you have to excuse that there's no 1-beds left at this point, but you can buy a 2-bed at 450. There's also a corner unit at 460. The big incentive of this one is that the developer pays an upfront rental income of, it's actually 4.5% per year on the 2-beds. And they pay 6 years rental income up front. Please excuse my slide, but as of Monday this week, the developer increased the rental from 4 to 4.5% on the last units on the 2-beds. So the way it works is, instead of paying 450 for a 2-bed, you get 6 years rental income paid up front from the developer, and the cash that you need to buy it is actually 328 with the increased rental. So you buy it 328 and you have a buyback at 450. So very clear profit margin on this one. The taxes are not paid for, unfortunately, so you have to factor that in. But it's much more profitable as I say, as you go up the capital ladder, if you will. The buyback is in place. It's optional, okay? So you can keep it and rent it. You can keep it and sell it, or you can sell it back for what you paid at 450. The owner can use the hotel for 4 weeks every year, free of charge. So again, your allowance increases there as well. So on that one, yeah, there's some 2-beds left on the second floor. There's a corner unit on the top floor. Hi there, Heather. Thanks for sticking up your hand. Sorry, bear with me. We'll come to the questions shortly. But yeah, if you'd like a cost breakdown on the 2-bed, please drop me an email and I will get that over to you. Okay, last but not least, before we start the Q&A, I've been talking a little bit too long. The last property, I love this one. It is the Royal Obidos in Obidos, would you believe, on the Silver Coast, just 40 minutes north of Lisbon. This is a 5-star golf and spa resort, which is actually built on and for a PGA golf course, so particularly attractive for any golfers. The hotel at the back is not for sale. The apartments just in front are a mixture of 1-bedroom and studio apartments, which are for sale. All of the development is golf. You can see the golf course there, just at the front. They're all facing the same way, downhill over the lake and over to the sea. The qualification is at 500,000. Okay, it's not low density. It's not a renovation. So it's just a new build at 500,000. You have the option to purchase either 2 studio apartments at 350 each, or you can buy a 1-bedroom at 500. The development is already finished. Okay, the grass is fully grown now, unlike that photo, but it was finished in 2021. The big incentive as an investor on this one, however, is that before tax, the hotel pays a fixed rental income of 7% per year. After the Portuguese withholding tax comes to 5.25% per year. And they'll pay 5 years rental income up front to help towards the cost of the purchase. So similar to the Pelican, if you were to buy a 1-bed, instead of paying 500, you're going to pay 368 with a buyback at 500, or you buy 2 studios at 500 with a buyback at 700. So again, slightly more capital required, but an increased profit margin between the two. You have a buyback in place, guaranteed, but optional buyback, and you can stay here for 6 weeks per year as well. Or what we did a little while back is we arranged for our client to have 3 weeks per year, but to have 2 properties so that they could bring some family out to stay with them as well, which is fine. But overall, yeah, that is the most profitable option out there right now, and like I say, particularly attractive for any golfers. There's not too much going on within walking distance of the resort, other than golf. There is a really nice lagoon, as you can see at the back. Otherwise, it's a taxi ride just into the centre of Obidos, and of course to the seafront, which isn't all that too far away. Okay, but that's the rundown. That's the process. We've covered the hot properties. I hope they've made it. I've given you a bit of a hint as to which one my personal favourites are at the moment. We're now going to move on to the Q&A. I've got some quite good questions coming in, both from before the webinar and currently, so we'll start those in a second. In the meantime, if there is any further information that you need, you have my email address on the screen. You also have my WhatsApp number as well for any quick messages. I can provide, of course, brochures for each of the developments, along with the latest availability. Any help that you need with regard to the Portuguese tax guide, I can provide you with a copy of our tax guide as well. The cost illustrations available, so that's a personalized cost breakdown for you and your family for a particular development. I just need to know which developments you'd like to see the cost for, along with how many family members are to be included on the visa. And of course, I would highly recommend, with the time that we've got left to submit applications, is to speak on a Zoom call. Let's book a meeting in to speak, so I can run through your questions in a timely manner, to prevent kind of a bit of email tennis, which might delay the time that we have. Nonetheless, there you go. So let's get stuck in. So Q&As. Hope that was okay for everyone. Hi, Nathaniel. Okay, you've asked a question and you've renounced it as well, as far as the US citizenship. So can I renounce US citizenship once an EU citizen? Yes, you can. There are pros and cons of doing that. One pro of renouncing US citizenship for the Portuguese is that you can be liable for NHR without attracting tax back in the US. So that would be a big thumbs up, but there are things to consider before you make any rash decisions on that. Okay. What is required in an application? Okay, so document-wise, first of all, basic ID documents. So the copies of passports for each of the family members that want to be included on the application. And with that, I can prepare a reservation form for the unit that you wish to buy. And once we've done that, there'll be a deposit to pay on the property. You'll instruct a lawyer, and then you'll be looking to meet with that lawyer as soon as possible to complete the paperwork with the legal contracts. There'll also be a criminal record check required, which must be apostilled. We don't necessarily have to have the document apostilled before the deadline. If we do run shy of time, we can submit your application beforehand. But once we have the details of nationality and the property, source of funds, things like this, my team will provide you with a full breakdown of exactly what documents that you need, Nathaniel. So yeah, any other questions on that, please do ask. Do you need to purchase a property before applying for the visa? Yes, you do. You need to have purchased and completed the deed for the property before you can submit the visa. You must meet the criteria before it will be submitted. Hi there, Jane. Can you submit an application before you have identified a property? Yep, it's a similar question there. You unfortunately not. That's why we've got so much work to do before the deadline. We have to get the tax number. We have to complete the purchase of a property, and then we can submit the application. So that's what we've got ahead of us. Yeah, that's what we've got to do. Hi there, Jerry. What is the reduced tax status? Why is the reduced tax status not appealing to US citizens? So yeah, may have covered that one, Jerry. But in short, the US will continue to tax you. You will still be liable to US taxes with a US passport, even if you've moved away from the US. It's very rare. The US taxes your citizenship rather than your residency. So even if you have favorable tax here in Portugal, you're still going to have to be paying back in the US, so it kind of counteracts the benefits of NHR. So again, as mentioned there with Nathaniel, if you do renounce your US citizenship for Portuguese, you might still creep in 5 years of NHR once you have your citizenship. What about the Azores? Yep, you can buy in the Azores, Nathaniel. That's fine. That's still, you can still find property in the Azores. Hi, Erica. What documents for the US are needed to open a bank account and receive the tax number? Um, Similar documentation, Erica. For the tax number, we really don't need a lot for the tax number. It's really just copies of passports and proof of address. Once the deposit and you've instructed the lawyer, we'll go and get that within a matter of days. As far as the bank account, that will be subject to which bank that we choose. There is a good bank that works pretty quickly in Portugal that we use called Bison Bank. Naturally, they will give you a full breakdown of what documents they need, but it will be, again, provided to you as soon as we start the process, so we can get everything ready for not just the application, but also for setting up your bank account as well. Hi, Nathaniel. Can you invest in new construction? We are thinking low density Azores, as long as it meets the criteria, Nathaniel. Yeah, as long as it meets the criteria, which at 280, it will not meet the criteria because it has to be a renovation project where the building is over 30 years old. To buy a new property, you would have to be paying either 400 if it's in a low density area or 500 if not. Hi there, Erica. Currently in Faro for the next week. Would like to move forward as quickly as possible. Great, Erica. If you can send me an email, I think I may have seen you popping up on WhatsApp as well. Please do just let me know your availability and we can catch up maybe tomorrow if you're available. Are US mortgages acceptable? Do you require cash as payments for investments? US mortgages are acceptable. So if you was to remortgage in the US and purchase cash in Portugal, that's fine. But you can, as long as you don't mortgage the property in Portugal, then you will still meet the criteria. But yeah, by law, it has to be a cash purchase in Portugal. As to where you got the cash from, it can be a remortgage. It can be from any source, of course, as long as it's legal. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. So these hotel investments and pathway will no longer be available if the new law passes, or just the individual residential investment paths. At the moment, it's across the board. The Golden Visa in its entirety is set to be cancelled. There may be investment visas of some kind in the future. They may have different criteria. There may not be. We don't know at this point. But if the law is passed, which is likely to happen, it is the Golden Visa in its entirety for both commercial and residential properties will cease. Hi there, Key. What are the factors that the visa application is not successful? You have a criminal record is number one. You've got to have a clean criminal record. It's not necessarily a no-go if you do have a criminal record, depending on why or what the charges were. We've been successful with applications where there's been long-standing convictions from when our clients were very young and troublesome, but had a clean record for a good period of time. But generally, that's number one. And we'll find that out before you've committed any money. Make sure that you can pass. Other than that, there isn't a lot of criteria. That's why it's a golden visa. It's a VIP pass. You don't have to have a minimum income like other visa options. You don't have to be in the country for 6 months of the year. Yeah, clean criminal record. You've got a qualifying investment. You don't already have an EU passport. You're in the clear. You're good to go. Do you require a physical social security card or just the number? We don't need the physical card. I don't even need the tax number, I don't think, Erica. You will need a tax number in Portugal, which is referred to as your NIF. I'm not sure if we need the US tax number. I think you're okay. If we need it, we'll let you know. But I think we're okay on that one. Okay, great. So some good questions there. So those are the ones I picked up during the webinar. Again, got a few minutes left, guys. If you've got any questions to add there's some questions registered before we started. Okay, so question there from Key. So the criteria to invest in Portugal. So we've covered that off. Great. Hi there, Noman. Nice to meet you. Steps to obtain the Golden Visa from Susan. So yeah, I think we've covered that in today's presentation. So step one, find an investment that you like. Step two, tax number. Step three, complete the purchase with the lawyer. Step four, submit the application for your visa. Hi there, Hakeem. How can I get a work permit? Not something for today's webinar, unfortunately, Hakeem, but do drop me an email and we can go through. I can refer you to a colleague of mine that can assist with work permits. You can work, by the way, with the Golden Visa. If the Golden Visa is what you're considering, you can live, work, or just sunbathe with the Golden Visa. Hi there, Janice. The options available, can we cover those? Also, the pros and cons of each. Also, is multi-generational household require anything special? So we covered the developments. I've given you the pros and cons, I think, hopefully in enough detail. The multi-generational question, I'm not too sure what you're referring to there, Janice, but assuming you're referring to the multi-generations going onto the application, nothing special is required as long as parents are over the age of 65, that's okay. Or we can prove dependency. You can include spouse, married or unmarried, as long as you live together. And you can include children up to the age of 21 or older if they're in education. Okay. Pelin, hi there, Pelin. If I apply now, what chance do I have to get the Golden Visa? Is there any doubts that the application will not be accepted? If you apply now, Pelin, you will get the visa on the basis that you have a clean criminal record. That's it. And we still have time, but it does involve applying pretty quickly. The time is your only concern at the moment, of course, unless you have a dark history, Palin, and of a criminal record. Can you transfer a SSAS pension to Portugal to buy a house? You can buy houses with a pension. Paula, thank you for your question. You can buy houses with a pension, but you can't buy under a pension ownership if you wish to qualify for the visa, because the ownership of the property has to be in your name, has to be your ownership, not the pension. So the answer is you can draw from a pension, you can draw down capital from a pension to fund the purchase, but you couldn't purchase the property within the pension. Hopefully that makes sense. Hi there, Thelma. I want to move to Portugal, but what is the best route? Well, hopefully, then we've already been able to work out whether or not the Portuguese Golden Visa is the best route. We'll cover the criteria there, but again, any questions, please do ask. Hi there, Stephanie. Can we still get the visa? Yes, you can still get the visa. Again, just bearing in mind the restrictions that we have upon us. Hi there, Nathaniel. Good to see you there. I think I've covered some of these questions as well. Please do drop me a message, Nathaniel, either on WhatsApp or email. We can maybe catch up tomorrow or one day next week, and I'll go through the questions that you have if you have any other further questions. Hi there, Jane. Where to buy a property cheaply? Okay, so I mentioned about getting a property for less than 280,000. There's a development, a Wyndham hotel, which is effectively 250,000 because you get cash back of 30 as soon as you buy the share at 280. But that is the lowest capital route at this point. Hi there, Sanaya. When are they going to end the Golden Visa? Okay, so we've covered that question as well. How to apply swiftly to Portugal with family. So to apply swiftly, Sanaya, first step, please just drop me a message. We'll make some time to speak. We'll go into some more detail. We'll go through the costs together, and I can answer any questions that you have. Hi there, Kimian. My husband has EU citizenship. He was born in France. Can I get EU citizenship through marriage without having the Golden Visa? Yes, you can, within certain criteria. If you have already married into a European relationship, you might not need the visa. But again, drop me a message, Kim in, and I can go into some more detail on that for you. Hi there, Jerry. Can part of the purchase be financed? If so, how hard is it obtained to finance in Portugal? Unfortunately not, Jerry. You must be a cash purchase, or at least, I take that back. It has to be cash up until the qualifying amount. So if it qualifies at 280, it's got to be cash at 280. If you buy a property that qualifies at 280, but the price is 500, you could mortgage the amount above the 280. If you buy a property that qualifies at 500, but it cost $1 million, you could mortgage 500 and you could do cash for 500. But it has to be cash up until the qualifying amount. Okay, and then last question from Angus. Hi there, Angus. Is the Golden Visa program ending, or is just the criteria going to change? And can you buy in an approved area like Lisbon? It looks like the program is going to end, Angus. No one has suggested otherwise. The updated draft in Parliament still remains that the program is to end as a solution to the Portuguese housing crisis. So that's all we know for now. Hopefully not, but I don't know. The day may be upon us, which will be a sad, sad day, and I'll have to think of something else to talk about on my webinars. But nonetheless, hopefully that was helpful for everyone. There's no other questions come in at this point. Oh, one more question. Hi there, Erica. If purchasing a touristic apartment in Faro, would I be restricted to visiting there for the 7-day period? Potentially. It depends on the development, Erica. The reason why the stay is restricted on most developments is because you're going to be receiving a rental income for the weeks that you're effectively giving to the hotel. So the hotel will pay you a rental income because they're going to be making money from renting the property out. Of course, if you're staying there all the time, they're not going to be able to do that. So often they'll say, you can stay here for 7 days and then we'll give you this incentive or we'll give you this rental income. So it depends on the development. Not necessarily. Just got to check out the details. And again, if there's a property in particular that you've seen, Erica, that you want me to give you some a second opinion on, happy to do so. Send it over, and I can answer any questions that you have.